Well, it's that wonderful time of the year again. The time where I start reviewing Thomas-related media for Thomascember. I've been doing Thomascember for years now, and in all that time the show has gotten bigger in popularity. For better and mostly for worse nowadays. And every year I try to do a theme for each Thomascember. Like one year it would be the classic series, the other year it would be the TV specials, the other year it would be new series and new specials, and another year it would be the video games and so on and so forth. And last year I did a few trivial things, like forgotten characters, scrapped episodes, and the list goes on. And this was so popular that I decided to bring it back for this year, so I'm not bound to anything. But with stuff like, say, forgotten characters from past episodes of the series, I'm not going to do every single one of them, because there's just so many forgotten characters that would take up a lot of lists. So I'm just going to restrict it to, say, 4 or 5 of them per year. Because there are so many other forgotten characters for the TV series that are worth talking about. In this way I could just talk about whatever I want and I'm not bound to anything. So from now on, Thomascember is just going to be the new series, new specials and a lot of trivial things that I feel are worth talking about. There's quite a bit to go through this year, so welcome to Thomascember 2019. Ever since I did my Forgotten Characters and Scrapped Episodes Thomascember review last year, a lot of people have been commenting and bringing up characters that I forgot to talk about last year. So it only seems fair that I get to talk about some more forgotten characters this year. And because there are so many forgotten characters from the show, it would just take up so much of my time that I'm just going to do 4 or 5 characters per year. And the characters I've chosen to talk about for this year's Forgotten Characters category are Boko, Smudger, Bulstrode, Derek and Fergus. Let's start off with Boko himself, a mixed traffic engine diesel who primarily works on Edward's branch line and occasionally the main line. A character introduced in the Railway series who was soon introduced to the TV series in the show's second series. Boko was first introduced in the Series 2 episode The Diesel, where Bill and Ben were once called to the yard to shunt trucks for his train. When he takes the trucks without knowing that they shunted them, they retaliate and play a trick on him to teach him a lesson. But when Edward clears everything up, they apologise to Boko, and Boko apologises for not understanding about the trucks. He then appeared again in the episode Wrong Road, where he helped Gordon out of a situation where Bill and Ben threatened to dump him into the sea. But it was obviously a joke, and obviously Gordon wasn't to know that, so he still believes that Boko saved his life. Boko even got an appearance in the episode Edward's Exploit, where he's encouraging the other engines to show more respect to Edward since he's old, but is full of surprises. He appeared in the Series 3 episode One Good Turn, where Bill and Ben began fighting after an incident with the turntable and soon began to give each other the silent treatment. Edward thought that this attitude was counterproductive and spread bad atmosphere in the yard. So Boko came up with a plan, convincing the Fat Controller to let him take a special. Boko's own heavy goods train was left behind, with only Bill and Ben to pull. Neither one was strong enough to pull it on their own, so they had to compromise and pull it together. Boko would make a cameo in Thomas and the Special Letter in Series 4, before making a big return in the episode Double Teething Troubles, where he helped out Derek on Gordon's Hill when he broke down because of his teething troubles with his cooling system. And ever since that episode of Series 5, Boko was never seen or heard of again. Boko became a really popular character since his debut in Series 2, and it's really a shame that he never got more screen time after Series 5. So for him to come back to work with Bill and Ben again would just be great for classic Thomas fans. The next character to talk about is Smudger, a narrow-gauge tank engine who used to work on the Mid-Sodor Railway and was later turned into a generator due to his tendency to derail frequently. Smudger, according to Duke, was a show-off who worked in the railway that he worked on with the other narrow-gauge engines. Smudger would road roughly and often come off the rails. Duke tried to warn him to be careful, but Smudger refused to listen to his advice. He was finally punished by being turned into a generator and being put behind the engine shed. The story was used by Duke to lecture Stuart and Falcon, now known as Peter, Sam and Sir Handel, and the two engines became really useful engines after this. Now making a steam engine become a generator after a few mishaps is kind of a dark plot line when you think about it. In fact, has anyone ever found Smudgers since the landslides when they found Duke? No information was given about Smudger's fate once the Mid-Sodor Railway closed, so it must be assumed that he has either remained there, was moved to a different location, was restored back to working order, or was scrapped. A very interesting thing about Smudger is that he was the first engine in the TV series to not be created by Wilbert Awdry. However, his role was based on that of Stanley from Duke the Lost Engine. So you could say that he may have been based off of Stanley, but was just given a different class and number and name. Very interesting bit of trivia, I know. Series 4 also introduced us to Bulstrode, a highly disagreeable barge who used to carry cargo like coal and stone to Knapford Harbour, but always complained about not being loaded fast enough. This annoyed the trucks, but one day Bulstrode ended up getting what he deserved when Percy accidentally pushed stone trucks off the quay into his hold, bursting a hole in his hull. He was then towed to the beach where children could play in him. He remains there today, most likely still grumbling. Since the engines often pass through that little lighthouse bit where Bulstrode is standing, I think it would be nice to see a few scenes with him moaning and complaining about his life as a playground for children. But what do you guys think? Despite never being seen again after this one episode, Bulstrode did make a couple of appearances in video games like Thomas and the Great Festival Adventure, and his face has even shown up on a couple of trucks every now and then. And his original TV series model was on display at Drayton Manor's Thomasland, in hopefully good condition. Derek the Diesel, also known as Patsman, was a diesel whom the Fat Controller had sent in to help Bill and Ben with their work at the quarry, but Derek's cooling system overheated on Gordon's Hill upon his arrival, and Boko had to come to the rescue. The news of the rescue went through the North Western Railway's rumour mill in due course, until a confused Percy informed Bill and Ben that Derek had toothache. Bill and Ben were apprehensive of Derek as a result, but forgot their fear when Derek's cooling system overheated yet again and they had to help him home. Derek was then sent to the works to be mended. He later appeared in Colonel Engines pulling a goods train up Gordon's Hill during the music video and tried to do things better. Derek is described as a jolly, enthusiastic diesel who likes hard work. Unfortunately, due to his engine, he is highly prone to teething troubles, namely overheating and suffering frequent breakdowns, for which he is apologetic for the inconvenience. This is unfortunate since he wants to work hard, but Derek is a likeable chap, and even Bill and Ben decided that they liked him due to his friendly nature. Derek was another one of those characters like the Horrid Lorries that got a good episode, but nothing else was done more with them after that. And that's really a shame, because Derek could have had the potential to have come back to the island to hope to be a better engine with a better engine. If you know what I mean. And I've heard some rumours that Derek's teething troubles in this series was actually based off of his bases in real life, having similar problems with their real engines in real life, which is why their life probably ended so soon. And the final character I'm going to talk about for this year's Thomascember is Fergus, the railway traction engine who works at the Sodor cement works. Fergus was introduced in the Series 7 episode Bill, Ben and Fergus, where he was sent to the quarry to help Mavis and the twins with the work. The twins immediately began to get annoyed with Fergus, telling them to do it right. So when they brought a rock crusher to the quarry, they decided to do the opposite of what he told them to do. Thus, to do it wrong. However, their naughty actions nearly caused them to get caught in a landslide caused by the blasting and their heavy rock crusher. But Fergus managed to push them out of the way, only to end up in the rock slide himself. The twins managed to help Fergus out and apologise for their bad behaviour. Fergus appeared again in Salty's Stormy Tell, where being brand new, got lost once and ended up at the scrapyards. Salty was sent to fetch him, and the two departed home. As they passed the lighthouse, the generator broke down, and the light in the lighthouse went out. Luckily, Salty suggested Fergus to use his flywheel to power the generator. The plan worked, and the ship managed to clear the path before it crashed into the rocks. Fergus's final appearance was in the episode Fergus Breaks the Rules, where the Fat Controller sent Devious Diesel to help Fergus at the cement works. Diesel soon started to find Fergus annoying with his do-it-right attitude, so he tricked him by telling him that the Fat Controller wanted him to work at the Sodor Ironworks, aka the smelters. When Fergus arrived there, he found the place very scary, and when Harry and Bert showed up, Fergus and his driver immediately ran away. When the Fat Controller learned of Fergus's absence, he sent Thomas to search for him. Thomas eventually found Fergus, out of steam and hiding at an old quarry mine. Fergus was worried he would be in trouble, but when the Fat Controller heard the whole story, he punished Diesel by sending him to the smelters, and Fergus returned home, thankful for his friendship with Thomas and relieved he was still the pride of the cement works. Fergus can be described as a stickler for the rule book, since he knows it by heart, and his catchphrase is "do it right." His insistence on doing everything absolutely according to the rules can annoy the other engines, but he is a decent engine at heart, and will not hesitate to help others in trouble. He is also friendly to nearly everyone he meets. I've always found Fergus a very interesting character because I never knew that there was such a thing as a traction engine that ran on rails, since the only traction engines I knew of back then were like Trevor, who ran on roads instead of rails. So it's very interesting to learn that railway traction engines that run on the railways actually do exist. Fergus was another one of those characters that's always been interesting but never appeared again after the 7th series. The main reason Fergus never returned to the series after Series 7 was because of some damage that was taken to his model after one of the episodes was filmed. During the filming of the episode Bill, Ben and Fergus, Fergus's model was damaged in the scene where he got buried in a rock slide. The model still worked, but the flywheel became temperamental. As a result, the model was never used again after the 7th series, and his model was never seen again until a model exhibition in 2019. Because the show is now CGI, they have the potential to bring him back in CGI form. And I kind of think it'd be cool to bring in an Irish actor to voice the character. And don't ask me why, I just for some reason think that an Irish accent would suit Fergus. And that's probably because of my Irish heritage, but I really think that an Irish accent would suit Fergus. Like perhaps him being voiced by the actor who played Dougal Maguire in Father Ted. That would be hilarious. And those are the forgotten Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends characters I will be talking about this year. There's a lot more forgotten characters to go through, but they'll all have to wait for the next few years of Thomascember. But for now, these are 5 of the many forgotten characters that don't deserve to be forgotten by any fan, old and new, and deserve a lot more attention in the future of the TV series. You know how back in the early days when children's TV shows weren't afraid to have dark moments in there? Like say a dark storyline or a really dark moment in a mostly light-hearted episode? Well, the classic Thomas the Tank Engine series had that too. Even a children's show like Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends can have its dark moments here and there. Whether it be dark storylines, dark few moments in mostly light-hearted episodes, the list goes on. And I'm here to talk about some of them today. I mean, it can be easy to talk about pretty much every single episode from Series 5, since they push the boundaries of the past series, and they have a lot more threatening things for the engines to deal with. They've even tackled the theory on whether or not ghosts exist with their spooky episodes like Ghost Train, Duncan Gets Spooked, Haunted Henry, and many others. And as I said, many of the episodes from Series 5 with their natural disasters can be very dark at times, since it's life-threatening situations that people would often deal with in real life. And just to show these kind of things in a children's show like Thomas the Tank Engine was pretty risky at the time, but it was a risk that really paid off in my opinion. And as I mentioned when talking about Smudger in the previous Thomascember, turning him into a generator and just leaving him behind the shed is quite dark when you look back at it. Even the image of Duke being left all alone in the shed as soil buries his entire shed throughout the years is really dark too. It just shows how edgy Thomas the Tank Engine could be in its starter days. But the biggest dark theme in Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends during the classic series was the theme about scrap. The whole theme of scrap in Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends was originally brought up in the Series 2 episode Safe from Scrap, when Trevor the traction engine was set to be broken up because he was old-fashioned, until Edward saved him thanks to the vicar. But as it went into its 3rd season, the whole theme of scrap became a much bigger thing for the engines, becoming something that would make the engines shiver with fear. Being scrapped, as well as the mentioning of a scrapyard, is like a death sentence for steam engines on Sodor. Even Oliver and Stepney, 2 of the most popular characters in the Railway series as well as the TV series, were on the scrap line until they were saved. Even old Slowcoach was in danger of being broken up in a scrapyard until Thomas and Percy saved her. It just shows that scrap not only affects steam engines, but other vehicles as well. There had even been some sets like the other railway and the scrapyards which would contain scrapped engines all over the place. I mean, when you look at the scrapyards in the classic series, it just looks like a steam engine's graveyard from their point of view. A place where all steam engines dread to go to, and even just the mentioning of it sends shivers down their funnels. There's even been various diesel engines that wanted to see steam engines scrapped throughout the TV series, like Devious Diesel, the Diesel from Bowled Out, Arian Burt, back when they were first introduced in Series 5, you know, before they became a bunch of goofy villains in Series 6. And of course Diesel 10. Diesel 10 was a character that wanted to dominate the entire railway and make steam engines nothing but useless scrap. Now that's really dark for a children's movie as well as a children's show in my opinion. You know, before Heads Entertainment shattered all away in Colonial Engines and then sort of brought it back in Day of the Diesels. Even the Series 8 episode Thomas to the Rescue wasn't afraid to show a few scrapped engines in a dream sequence. That just shows how dark the show could be even when it went downhill. Now the whole fear of scrapyards and being scrapped from the steam engine came from Robert Aldry's books in the first place before it made its place into the TV series. The whole thing of making scrap a big fear thing for steam engines was done all the way back to the Railway series when Robert Aldry wrote the books. Back in the story Tenders for Henry and Enterprise and Engines, Gordon went through the whole thing about steam being abolished in Britain, and how every single one of Flying Scotsman's class except for Flying Scotsman were all scrapped and broken up. Now Aldry obviously based this on real life events since steam was being abolished in the 60s, and most steam engines were being scrapped and cut up. And he took it even further in Stepney the Bluebell engine with the very first story, where it shows some steam engines being left in a siding waiting to be cut up. Just the sadness and fear in their faces just makes it seem like it's a really bad thing to have them be scrapped. Just really makes you feel sorry for these locomotives. And that was the power of Robert Aldry's writing. He could turn something that was normal and everyday back in the 1960s when steam was abolished, and then turn it into something that's just really dark and heartbreaking for people that read it, especially if you're a lover of steam engines. This just shows what an amazing writer Robert Aldry was, taking something that was mundane in the 1960s when steam was abolished to make room for diesel engines and turning it into something personal. And I think that thanks to the TV series as well as the Railway series, it makes a lot of steam engine lovers feel really sad and sorry for steam engines when you see photographs of them being lined up waiting to be cut up. Just so many images of these old scrapyards and lines of steam engines waiting to be cut up is just heartbreaking to a steam engine lover. And this is something that the TV series today is lacking. And I know that the showrunners today would probably see this kind of thing about scrap and scrapyards being too dark for children to watch it today. But that was part of what made the classic series so great for us fans. It was never afraid to take dark chances. It just shows that the TV series as well as the Railway series was a lot more adult than people give them credit for, taking something that wouldn't have been seen as much of a big deal back in the 1960s and turning it into something that is a big deal for steam engine lovers. All these dark tones that were in the classic series, such as ghost trains, natural disasters, and even the theme of scrap, is just something that I feel needs to come back to the TV series, because that's what made it more adult than people realise it. While some people may see it as too dark and scary for young kids, I personally see it as taking a risk in a children's TV show that wouldn't have been taken today. And it's just these many dark elements that makes a lot of people love the original TV series and the Railway series in the first place. Of course, we still get those happy endings that many people know the TV series and the Railway series for, but it's just some of those dark elements that tends to make the TV series and Railway series rewatchable and rereadable. And those are all the dark elements that made Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends so great during the classic series that really should be brought back to the new series every once in a while. And this is just the dark side of Sodor that we haven't seen for a long time that needs to come back to the TV series sooner rather than later. You know how a few years ago in Thomascember where I reviewed some of the video games from the 90s and early 2000s of Thomas the Tank Engine? Well, actually I thought, why not review two of the toys I used to buy when I was a kid? And we'll start off with Ertl. Like most Thomas fans in the 90s, I would always buy the next Ertl model to be released. And I'm here to talk about them tonight. The Ertl Company is an American toy company which formerly produced several Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends toys from 1984 to 2004. In 1984, when the die-cast models were first released, they had the characters with sticker faces rather than plastic faces that we know them to have today. This went on until 1992. Then in 1993, they started to produce some proper faces for the characters, using plastic materials to create faces to make them look more three-dimensional. And this went on throughout 1993 to 1999. The 2000s was the beginning of a revamped packaging for Thomas the Tank Engine Ertl models. Whereas they started off having pictures of the characters in a lovely background, the 2001 started to have a generic blue background with the new Thomas and Friends logo since the show was renamed to that. And when Thomas and the Magic Railroad was being released in cinemas, they made a huge thing about it with their toy lines for Ertl. During the hype of Thomas and the Magic Railroad, special Ertl models of the characters from the movie were released, including Lady, Diesel 10, Splatter and Dodge, and Thomas with Mr. Conductor. And as much as I love Diesel 10 as a villain and a character, my only nitpick with his Ertl model is the fact that it's just Diesel 199 repainted and remodelled. with a claw that's not posable at all. The packaging card style changed again in 2002, with a shrunk version of the logo in the top left corner. The blue background was replaced with two-tone stripes, and a cartoon illusion of the model was included on the top right corner, and rails were drawn underneath the bottom of the model. Another change in models from the 2002 series was a new coupling style for the back of the engines. Whereas in the early days, the engines had little hooks where you could connect the coaches and trucks to. And in 2002, the hook and eye style was replaced to a U-hook. This was believed to be sturdier, longer lasting, and allowed for the engines to couple together. They also changed the rolling stock to fit this thing. And Ertl soared in with their toy lines until 2004 when it sadly ended. Like all good things, Ertl sadly came to an end in 2004 with its final year of release of new models. And then they were replaced by these little Oompa-Loompas instead.
Oompa, Loompa, Doopa-Dee-Dee. If you are wise, you'll listen to me.
The Ertl models were some of the first Thomas the Tank Engine toys I ever had as a kid. And as far as I can remember, there were some characters that we had two of. One for me and one for my older brother. And not every toy in Ertl was made out of metal. Some characters were made out of plastic, like Cranky the Crane and most of the rolling stock. Another thing that people loved about the Ertl models was the fact that they sold characters from the TV series and the Railway series. Okay, they didn't do all the Railway series characters, but it was still quite a good selection when you look back at it. Various characters in the Ertl range were actually Railway series characters that were never introduced to the TV series. So we got pretty much all of the mountain engines. Even though we never saw them in the TV series, we still had loads of fun playing with these characters. And for certain characters, they reused some various models from previous characters that were released. Now with characters like Duke and Bertram and Falcon and Sir Handel makes sense since they have the same models and Falcon and Sir Handel have the same engine. So if that's the case, why did they never release a new version of Peter Sam as Stuart with his old file? Ah well. And it also made sense with characters like Devious Diesel, Arian Birds and Splatter and Dodge because they're basically the same class of diesel. And they of course used the original Thomas model for the Bluebell steam engine, which was one of my favourites at the time. But there can also be some downsides to them using the same models for new characters. Like when they did Diesel 10 for Thomas and the Magic Railroad, they basically just reused the model from Diesel 199 with a new face and a claw that wasn't posable at all. And my other nitpick is the fact that when they released Flying Scotsman in Ertl, it was just basically Gordon repainted green. I mean, come on guys, couldn't you have at least made an effort to give him his second tender? And at least give him a face that made him look like from the Railway series? You know, sort of like what Wooden Railway did. But that's just a nitpick and it's still a really good model. The original Ertl diecast sets even came with their own sets with different locations and the Thomas Carrier case, which I used to own. There's even been moments when Ertl have done metallic characters, one of the most popular and rarest ones being the Gold Thomas, which I own. And there were times where they would do some gift packs with the characters, like having several models in one pack, like with Thomas and Mr. Conductor from Thomas and the Magic Railroad, Thomas with Annie and Clarabelle and various other rolling stocks, or Annie and Clarabelle together. And there's even been some Christmas sets, like this Thomas and the Christmas Tree set that I got. In America, various VHS tapes of the show were sold as a gift set with at least one or two Ertl characters. The Americans are really lucky when it comes to certain Thomas products, aren't they? I mean, I don't remember ever getting any Ertl models with VHS tapes. Ah well. And with Ertl also came various different other products besides the diecast engines, including the Golden Rail range, the miniature range, and the Keyring miniature range. Ertl even did some wind-up toys with some of the characters like, say, the Fat Controller, which made a cameo in the City Show one time. But over the years, people still look back on the Ertl models, and some people on the internet even made fan videos with Ertl models. That just shows the power these toys had. And even though Ertl ended in 2004, their legacy lives on, with various models going at a ridiculous price on eBay and Amazon, and even one of the models showing up in the episode Flower Power. That just shows how popular Ertl was and still is for a lot of fans. Some of my favourite Ertl models would have to be Gordon, which is an engine that I used to carry around a lot when I was a kid, Diesel 10 despite being the Von class, Fergus, Tiger Moth, which I still use to this day in my Thomas series, Cranky the Crane, which I still use to this day in my Thomas series, Bluebell, Splatter and Dodge, and Neil. These models have also been really popular with various fan videos you see on YouTube. especially since I use a couple of them in my Thomas series, like obviously Cranky the Crane and Tiger Moth and a few road characters. Ertl was one of the most popular toys of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends there ever was in the 90s. And I find it a real shame that they ended in 2004 because there were so many other characters that they could have done, Railway series and TV series. And if they hadn't ended their reign of toy lines, then who knows how bigger Ertl could have got than it already was. But most Thomas fans still have all the Ertl toys to look back on and have fond memories of playing them. And if you have Ertl models of your own, I'd say that they're definitely worth keeping for sentimental and nostalgic value. Especially if you've got the golden and silver Thomases, because they could be worth a fortune in the near future. Unlike many Thomas products of the past, present and future, Ertl is one of those popular Thomas the Tank Engine toy ranges that will never go away from our memories anytime soon. The second Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends toy line I'm going to be talking about is Wooden Railway, a Thomas and Friends merchandise range that consisted of wooden model trains, tracks and accessories. It ran from 1993 to 2017, and in that time it became one of the most bought Thomas toys ever made. Because Wooden Railway was another one of the big selling Thomas the Tank Engine merchandises since its early days, I thought it was worth talking about. The Wooden Railway merchandise line for Thomas and Friends was created by Roy Wilson of Learning Curve in 1992, with the line becoming publicly available in 1993. These original models were primarily constructed with painted wood, along with metal used in the coupling magnets and axles and plastic for the wheels and faces. These models were relatively simple, with simple wood stubs for the funnel and dome, while details such as windows, whistles and buffet beams were augmented. And as you know, I still have some of the early 90s Wooden Railway Thomas the Tank Engine models in my collection. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the line was overhauled and the majority of the models underwent major redesigns. The wooden funnel and smoke bots were replaced with separate plastic smoke bots with more realistic funnels. The tender engines received an additional upgrade with a moulded plastic coal pile in their tenders. These improved designs were manufactured until 2002, when they were replaced with a third generation of design, which included new and more detailed faces. 2011 saw another slight redesign in the form of new faces to collide with the recent CGI series switchover. In late 2011, Tomy bought out Learning Curve and as such acquired the rights to the Wooden Railway line. They sold the products previously planned to be released by Learning Curve in early 2012. The products due to be released in late 2012, coinciding with the special Blue Mountain Mystery, were cancelled because Learning Curve had only developed the computer-generated prototypes before they were acquired by Tomy. Most of these cancelled releases with the new CGI-style models were reconstructed by Tomy and sold under their name, and a few others were later released by Fisher-Price. Tomy held the license until the end of 2012. In 2013, Fisher-Price began manufacturing and distributing the Wooden Railway merchandise line, and this change introduced another redesign. This upgrade was used for all of the Wooden Railway merchandise line until late 2017. All the engines, rolling stock and vehicles were reconstructed with more paint detailing, current CGI style faces as well as curved edges to prevent edge wear and wood break. All models with multiple bogies had their chassis made with plastic, and other slight plastic incorporations were utilised to cut down production costs. The Wooden Railway merchandise became one of Thomas & Friends' longest running and most popular merchandise lines. But sadly, the wave lines for Wooden Railway ended in 2017, and then we got this piece of shit to replace it instead. Okay, they were then updated a year later after the sales didn't go very well, but they're still a piece of shit compared to Wooden Railway. Wooden Railway is another one of the toy lines of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends that I bought a lot when I was a kid. I had most of the characters from the original run, and some of the ones that I don't have I kind of regret not getting. During the 90s, Wooden Railway also gave us some Railway series characters that were either sold as Ertls or not sold as Ertls. Like Ertl, they sold most of the characters from the TV series and a majority of characters from the Railway series. They even released some that hadn't been released by Ertl. Also like Ertl, they sold characters based on Thomas and the Magic Railroad characters, including Lady, Splatter and Dodge and Diesel 10 himself. They even released a Muffle Mountain playset based on the film. And also like Ertl, certain wooden railway products were only released in the USA. Like this sad story of Henry pack, which is also known as Come Out Henry, some wooden railway models with various books and VHS tapes and other sets that were based on various episodes, like this Thomas Comes to Breakfast limited edition set, and this A Better View for Gordon limited edition set, which look pretty awesome by the way. They also got this Jack Frost Percy, which looks really cool. And I find it a shame that I never got to see it in stores. They'd also brought out some limited edition sets in the UK, like these two Flying Scotsman trains, which I got both of, the 70th anniversary 2 Thomas sets with a golden Thomas, which isn't exactly that gold, and a Thomas that looks like the old model that Christopher Lloyd had when he was a kid, and this really awesome black James, also known as Origin James, which I have. Wooden Railway also ranged out to different types of products with their line, with miniature characters, battery-powered characters, and many others. Another huge highlight of Wooden Railway was a lot of their playsets they released, like say Tim of Sheds, the Docks, the Big Station, the list goes on. They even did various location sets like the Muffle Mountain one I mentioned, and many accessories like characters that were either made out of wooden blocks or bits of plastic that almost looked like Lego minifigures, but aren't. Talking trains which look really cool, especially the Diesel 10 one. They even did a play table for young children to make a little model set of their own. They even did some really nice Christmas packs too, like this Rosie with a musical caboose, also known as a brake van in the UK. And like Ertl, they did a limited edition Golden Thomas, which a lot of people really want, but it's quite hard to find nowadays. And one thing I find really amazing about Wooden Railway is that when they first did Bertram from Series 5, they had him as a tank engine, which I found out may have been what he was originally supposed to look like, since it was said he was originally intended to be a tank engine. But then when he was re-released in 2016, they did him with Duke's design as we see in the TV series. So it's very interesting to see that his first Wooden Railway model may have been what he was intended to look like in the TV series. And as I mentioned, it was a damn shame that it was discontinued in 2017 just to make room for this piece of shit known as Wood. The first designs for Wood were just the engines, with some painted areas showing some areas of wood, which a lot of people really didn't like, so they updated it with having the engines painted all together. But they still look very inferior compared to original Wooden Railway, like having the lack of domes and not much detail compared to the Wooden Railways. But I must admit, the new Wood Rosie looks pretty good in my opinion, although not as good as the custom red Rosie I did, but I digress. To me, Wooden Railway was one of the greatest Thomas the Tank Engine merchandises I ever got as a kid. I enjoyed getting a lot of the trains, the rolling stock, and various other characters that we never got to see in the TV series because they were never adapted for the TV series from the Railway series. And much like the Ertl models, some of these models for Wooden Railway go on eBay and Amazon for ridiculously high prices. And there are many users like myself who still use them for fan videos on the internet. So in my opinion, Wooden Railway is just as popular as Ertl was back in when it was first made, and it's one of those Thomas and Friends toy lines that's fondly remembered by the fans to this very day. Even though the new Wood lines are trying to update themselves and make them better from their prototypes, people are still going to look back and remember the Wooden Railways figures because they're so much better in quality. And I don't care how many times they're going to keep releasing Wood series engines, they'll never come close to being as good as the original Wooden Railway, some of the greatest Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends toys ever made. Thomas and Friends in 4D Bubbling Boilers, also known as Thomas and Friends Bubbling Boilers, is a 4D special episode with cinematography by SimX Erwinks Entertainment and animation by Arc Productions. Now bear in mind, I never got to see Bubbling Boilers in 4D as I only had the 2D available on the YouTube channels. But I managed to keep an open mind and view it and get my own opinions out on it. But let's talk about the story first. On the island of Sodor, Mr. Bubbles the Clown is throwing a bubble party.
Fucking bubbles!
When Thomas arrives at the docks, he sees Cranky crossly unloading materials and crates for the party. Unfortunately, he cannot participate because he has to stay in one place. Salty is worried, however, but he soon becomes concerned when Stuart, Cranky's friend, distracts Cranky and drops bubble liquid onto Thomas. Thomas is in too much of a rush to go to the washdown. As he puffs, Thomas finds it hard to break, as the liquid is making him slip. He finds it funny when bubbles begin to puff out of his funnel, but the fun is soon over when the signal turns red. After nearly hitting Emily, he puffs into a separate track and crashes into a boarded up mine. And Thomas goes through various escapades while having bubbles in his boiler, all trying to get his delivery done and trying to stay in one piece. So what are my thoughts on bubbling boilers? I really wish I did see it in 4D. Now forgive me for saying this, but the plot of this kinda seems like a series 8 to 16 plot. Not one of the worst plots, but you could definitely tell it has series 8 to 16 writing all over it. With its crazy storyline, the wacky visuals and whatnot. And I must admit, it is quite funny to see Thomas blowing bubbles from his funnel in this special.
Fucking bubbles!
I mean, who besides writer Ian McHugh could have thought of this idea? Ian McHugh was a producer of Hit Entertainment, by the way, who'd been working on the show for years. And this was his first time writing a Thomas episode / special, and it really does show here. And you could tell that the purpose of the writing was to test out the capabilities of 4D for Thomas the Tank Engine. You know, because I know this is a 4D film, I somehow get the feeling that I probably would have liked this a lot more if I got to see it in 4D theatres. The most 4D films I've ever seen in the past were from Legoland, like say the Lego Movie 4D Adventure. And having watched Bubbling Boilers, I really do regret not getting the chance to see it in 4D, because it looks like it would have been a great experience. And I've seen 4D films before at Legoland, the most recent one being the Lego Movie 4D Adventure, and I absolutely loved that, how the technology just makes it feel like you're within the actual film, with wind machines, smoke machines, bubble machines, the list goes on. So I get the feeling that I probably would have had a great time experiencing this film in 4D. But as a non-4D film, it is entertaining enough. I just think it's better if you watch it in 4D, which is something I never got to do. One thing I find really interesting about this special is that a remix of the original Thomas and Friends theme, first composed by Mike O'Donnell and Junior Campbell, is heard in this special, a trope that was carried on from The Adventure Begins. And it's really nice to hear a remix of Mike and Junior's music in the show again. This definitely showed that the team was starting to go back to the original roots of the TV series. You know, back before they ruined it when Hit Entertainment took over. There's even some moments in the film that makes me think that this was intended to be a 4D simulation ride, like say the Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera or the Star Tours rides, but with 4D. The scene where Thomas and the trucks go through that mine and the various tracks in the mine makes it seem like to me that this was originally intended to be a 4D simulation ride. And it might just be me, but it really does look like it could have been intended for a 4D simulation ride. That would be awesome in my opinion. But I doubt that was the intention, since this was a 4D film. But I think it really could have worked as a simulation ride that was done in 4D. It just has the visuals and the effects of a ride, in my opinion. So Bubbling Boilers is a fun little special. I just don't think it's as great as many people make it out to be. Okay, it's not terrible or anything, I just don't really find myself rewatching this a million times over like I do with the Thomas and Friends specials that came out in the recent years. Even though I don't really see myself rewatching this 100 times compared to a lot of the other Thomas projects I've seen, it's still a fun little short and I do get a lot of laughs out of it every once in a while. But as I said before, I probably would have liked it more if I actually got to see it in 4D. So if you ever get the chance to see this film in 4D, then I would highly recommend it. I would highly recommend seeing it in 4D, because I think you'll have a better experience with it then. Better than the experience I had anyway. It's a fun little short that would keep the kids entertained, and I'm sure some adult Thomas fans might get some fun out of it as well.
Fucking bubbles!
You all may be familiar with how much of a fan of Rosie I am from the Thomas the Tank Engine series, since I have her as a main character in my Thomas series. Well, it all started out from her appearance episode Thomas and the Birthday Mail. And since then, Thomas and Rosie's friendship has gone bigger than we ever expected. Ever since I watched the episode Rosie Has Read, I felt that Thomas and Rosie's relationship in the show was something worth talking about. But I think we should start from the very beginning. In her first appearance, Rosie began idolising Thomas to the point of hero worship and imitation. Though this is said to be the most sincere form of flattery, It only served to irritate Thomas whilst he was trying to deliver a special birthday post train for Alice at High Farm. He even started to try and avoid her. But after Thomas had an accident in the course of delivering this train, Rosie helped him and he started to respect her. Ever since then, Rosie has become a reoccurring character in the show, often showing up besides Thomas or talking to Thomas every now and then. Rosie was later called to help Thomas shunt trucks until Hector the Horrid frightened her away. There was even one episode where Rosie stops Thomas from going under the bridge with a boat since the mast was too tall to go under it. And there was one hilarious moment where Thomas is chasing the Fat Controller's new car throughout the island and it passes Rosie, splashing mud all over her. That was honestly the first time we ever saw Rosie angry. And the first time we saw Rosie not interacting with Thomas as a main role was when she was charged to be Emily's back engine for the Funfest special. But we're here to talk about Rosie with Thomas, so we'll skip that one. On a rainy day in the 13th season, Thomas and Rosie played a game of Splish Splash Splosh in the puddles. And after Thomas takes the game too far, Rosie ends up rescuing Thomas when his fire went out after playing the game. As bad as Splish Splash Splosh is, it does show that Rosie and Thomas have a strong friendship with each other. One day Rosie had a cracked wheel, so Thomas and Butch the breakdown vehicle bought her a new one. On Sodor Surprise Day, aka April Fool's Day, Thomas blew his whistle right behind Rosie, causing her to bump into coal trucks and getting coal dust everywhere, which makes her laugh. And then came the episode Rosie is Red, the very first Valentine's Day special for Thomas. Not long after she got repainted red, during Valentine's Day, Diesel bumped her just as Cranky was loading her flatbed with a crate of roses, which ended up crashing on the tracks. Bill and Ben later saw Thomas telling Diesel off, causing the twins to think they are attracted to each other, much to their embarrassment. A bit of teasing and a meet-up with Thomas at the washdown caused her to avoid him for fear of humiliation, and she was not exactly pleased to know that she was headed to the same place he was. After a brief conversation with Edward, she rushed off so fast that she took the shunter's pole with her before it was moved out of her way. Thomas equally had a talk with Henrietta about the situation, and decided it would be best for him to make up with Rosie. The two ended up front to front at Vickerstown Station, where they made up for their recent events, and found that their specials were for Lady Hat's Valentine's Day surprise. And this particular scene says it all for me.
Hiya, Rosie.
Thomas!
I'm sorry I was rude to you, Rosie. I do like you a lot, but no more than any of the other engines.
I feel the same!
Good!
Yes, good.
I'm glad we got that sorted out.
That scene alone shows that the two might have romantic feelings for each other. Don't believe me? Well, I'll go through the evidence with you. Before Thomas even starts talking, he starts to laugh a little nervously, since he's a little nervous to talk to Rosie after the events. And it's plain to see that Rosie's a little bit shy about meeting Thomas as well after the events. And while Thomas is talking, he starts blushing bright red. And as soon as he says that he likes Rosie a lot, she starts to blush as well. And even when they both admit that they don't like each other any more than any other engines, they still giggle a little bit while they're talking, indicating that the two may have a slight crush on each other after all. So will Thomas and Rosie admit that they love each other in the future of the show? It's really hard to say at this moment, but it does make for great fan fiction. And while I'm on the subject of Rosie is Red, why the hell hasn't this promo picture been made into a Valentine's Day card yet? Make it happen, Ertl. Despite it actually being set up in Rosie is Red, people made the assumption that Thomas and Rosie could be a couple long before the episode even aired. Because of promo pictures and various events of Thomas the Tank Engine, you'd often see Thomas next to Rosie. And as I mentioned before, you'd see the two next to each other in various episodes where Rosie has a main role alongside Thomas. Even in a Thomas and Friends Big World Big Adventures jigsaw puzzle, she's next to Thomas. And it's this kind of thing which brought on various fan fictions on YouTube, like with Dalek44's Tommy Thomas series when Rosie was introduced as Thomas's love interest, and of course my own Thomas series when I made them boyfriend and girlfriend, as well as the main characters of the show. Now some people would consider this episode to be really weird and that the engines on Sodor shouldn't have romantic relationships with each other, but I personally see nothing wrong with it myself. I mean, since the engines on Sodor can have various emotions, it would make sense that they would have romantic relationships for each other with certain engines. Hell, Annie and Clabber have a great dislike for Daisy, so I see this romantic thing working on Sodor. And the episode Rosie has read is overall not great, especially when you compare it to other episodes of the show, but it is a nice little Valentine's Day episode, as well as being the very first Valentine's episode that they ever made in the series. It's a sweet little plot and a nice lesson to teach kids about not being rude to others despite what other people say. And if I'm honest, Thomas and Rosie were really the best characters in the show to demonstrate this message, especially with the title being a pun of the Roses of Red poem. But for all I know, this could have just been a setup for this plot, and it may not go any further than that, but it could do in the future, we just don't know yet. So whether or not the two actually do become a romantic couple in the show, I'm really interested to see how their friendship goes further as the show goes on. So Thomas and Rosie's friendship has become very interesting to me since Rosie has read, and I look forward to see how it develops as the show goes on. And it's almost like the team at Mattel have actually been seeing some Thomas fiction on YouTube and the internet for the inspiration for this episode. So it shows that even the writers ship these two. But like I said, the two may not actually become a couple in the show, but we're probably going to have to wait and see if they do or don't. And though this might just be the fanboy in me and because of my fan series, but I really think that Thomas and Rosie's relationship could go a little bit further as the show goes on. But whether it does or not, we're going to have to wait and see. But whatever direction Thomas and Rosie's friendship goes, I look forward to seeing the results of it in the near future of the show. And whatever the results are, whether they're a couple or not, we're just going to have to accept it as it is. Not long after Mattel Creations bought Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends from Hit Entertainment, that changes came in, and that big change was Big World Big Adventures, aka Series 22. This series, alongside the Big World Big Adventures movie, marks the third major reboot of the franchise, following the introduction of the Steam Team in Series 8 and the show switching over to full CGI in Hero of the Rails. Both productions were the result of a market research Mattel conducted with audiences around the globe. It was about how Mattel could keep Thomas and Friends relevant in a competitive market, as well as reversing declining toy sales. So is Big World Big Adventures aka Series 22 as bad as people intended it? Let's have a look. The series was split into two halves. One half with Thomas travelling around the world, visiting China, India and Australia, and the other half taking place on the island of Sodor. So what are my opinions on the 22nd series of the show? It's very hit and miss. Having watched these episodes myself, I could see why people were getting so angry with it. There were so many changes that a lot of people didn't like, including the bouncing of the engines which was introduced in Journey Beyond Sodor, and the various episodes that were very hit and miss in a lot of people's minds. Very much like Journey Beyond Sodor and the Big World Big Adventures movie, the bouncing is really distracting and very unrealistic and just takes away from the realism of the show. And having watched some of the episodes myself, I've come to my own conclusion with the series. I find it to be very hit and miss. I see it as being like Series 8 of the show. The new creators trying something new with it and didn't really work out very well. And I do honestly find it interesting to see Thomas travelling around the world in half of the series, like him visiting various other countries, seeing what the animators could achieve at bringing these exotic countries to life. Like seeing the outbacks of Australia is just gorgeous, the deserty type fields of India, and the beautiful settings of China. It's just the sort of thing that could transport kids into these places with Thomas the Tank Engine. At first I thought that the episodes where Thomas is in a different country will probably take place during the movie. But as I started to watch them over and over again, I thought that can't be it. As soon as it was announced, and after watching Big World Big Adventures the movie, I was thinking to myself, okay, this is going to sort of take place during the movie with the cross-country episodes, and the Sodor episodes are going to take place after the movie. That's interesting. But since there's no Neo in sight in the cross-country episodes, it's obvious that this takes place after the movie. Since Neo's nowhere to be seen in any of these cross-country episodes with Thomas, there's no way this took place in the movie. It's obvious that this must have taken place sometime after the movie. That makes no sense, since Thomas has already been around the world in the movie. And I just thought it was kind of pointless to set these cross-country episodes after the movie, because having them set in between the movie, like some scenes of the movie that we never got the time to see, would have been even better. just showing what kind of other adventures Thomas would have got up to with Neo across the world that we never got to see in the movie. But no, they had to write it so that Thomas went around the world again, even though he'd already did it before. Another thing that people really hate about this series is that they're downgrading on the realism and focusing a little bit more on the imaginative, exaggerated, cartoony type of stuff. One of the hugest changes of the series was removing Mark Morgahan as the narrator and replacing him with Thomas the Tank Engine telling the stories to the audience. Now this is a huge disappointment for me because Thomas the Tank Engine has always had a Liverpudlian doing the narrations in the UK, from Ringo Starr to Michelangelis and to Mark Morgahan. And having Thomas make an introduction and an ending as well as a few narrations during the episodes isn't terrible, it's just not the original narration that we're used to. So it can be really distracting when you don't get the original narrator in there. Another change was that the fact that Bill and Ben's original voice actor, Jonathan Broadbent, departed from the series, so he had to be replaced with two other actors, Ramses Hardbiker and Matt Wilkinson. And even though you could tell that it's not Jonathan Broadbent, they do a pretty good job of bringing these characters to life. I just wish they'd kept Jonathan Broadbent around. And let's talk about those infamous fantasy sequences throughout the episodes. In each episode, one of the characters has a random fantasy sequence that relates to the story. Like Gordon has this pink elephant-esque nightmare about the Fat Controller making silly changes to the railway, Rebecca having various contraptions attached to her to make her more interesting, Thomas meeting up with a giant panda that's literally a giant teddy bear, Thomas having a fantasy about him and Rosie falling out of a tree from a leaf. That doesn't really make any sense, but just go with it anyway. And the episode An Engine of Many Colours is set around daydreams, or I should say nighttime dreams, where James has various dreams about what it would be like if he was painted different colours other than red. And the results are pretty bad. And one big missed opportunity in this series is not including more foreign engines in the background. I mean, okay, you do see some other engines working in the backgrounds in the various countries, but let's be honest, they're just recolorings of Henry and Oliver most of the time. And especially when there's so many other different types of steam locomotives that you could have used in the background for these different countries. Like, I've watched this old documentary video about Australian railways in Victoria, and I've seen so many locomotives there, like the J classes, the R classes and the D3 classes. I mean, it would have been nice to have seen these in the background once in a while whenever Thomas was in Australia, just to show that these type of engines exist in the Thomas universe. Not showing some of these Australian classes like the R's, the J's and the D3s in the show is really a missed opportunity. And it's something that the TV series producers really ought to look into for next time. The series also introduced us to many new characters. There's Rebecca, a large tender engine who originates from the mainland, aka England, who helps Gordon pull the express during busy periods. Despite her size, Rebecca is shy, but not afraid to stand up for herself, and is not intimidated by the other engines. At times she feels the need to be on the same level as the other engines, which can sometimes make her anxious or over hasty. But despite her insecurities, Rebecca loves to see the best in everyone, and all of her friends appreciate her kindness and enthusiasm. And she's voiced by Rachel Miller, who brings the character to light in such a delightful manner. I mean, every time I hear this character talk, she just seems like the kind of woman that you'd really want to have a conversation with and never get tired of. And I absolutely love her design. It's taken from these old Battle of Britain class locos that were made in the 1950s for the Southern Railway. But I really think it's a missed opportunity that she wasn't painted green like the original engine she was based on. But in another way, the yellow does kind of suit her personality. So she's a character that I really would love to see more often in the show. There's Hong Mail, a Chinese tank engine that Thomas met during his stay in China. She's a good-natured but cheeky tank engine from China who loves to race. She is also blue like Thomas and out to prove that she's the #1 blue engine. Like Thomas, she could be careless and hasty at times, but always tries to make up for it. Hong Mei is also a good sport and knows when to put competition aside for the sake of helping a friend. And she just looks gorgeous. I really love the type of engine they used for her design. There's An and Yin Yon, two Chinese coaches that Thomas meets during this visit in China, who usually work along him with passenger workers. Both coaches are cheerful and bring out an engine's friendliness, and due to working all around China, they have an extensive knowledge of the country's roots. And some people may describe them as the Chinese versions of Annie and Clarabelle if they were boy and girl rather than girl and girl. And I can honestly see why they would make these kind of comparisons, since they look very similar to Annie and Cloudbert despite having different faces and coming from another country. But it is really nice to see how these two work off with Thomas, and it's quite entertaining at times. There's Noor Jahan, an Indian diesel engine who is known for taking visitors on a tiger safari. Unlike Rajiv, a character who I'll get to later, Noor Jahan does not let her decorative looks go to her head and berates the former for his pompous attitude. She is also calm and down to earth. Isla, an Australian flying Doctor airplane, befriends Thomas during his visit in Australia. She is always ready for an emergency and has helped many in times of need, but does not like to brag about it. She is a kind and respectful plane who takes her job very seriously. There's Tamika, an Australian steam rail motor. She's a rough and tough tourist train who is passionate about the animals of the rainforest and tries to protect them. And I find her design quite interesting because it's not like any steam engine design I've ever seen. I mean, you can see the definite Australian parts of it with the cowcatcher, since a lot of Australian engines have that. And when I first saw her, I honestly thought she was going to be a narrow gauge engine like Duncan. But no, she's standard gauge. And she looks gorgeous in my eye, and I'd really love to see her more often in the series. And there's also Shankar, an Indian diesel shunter who works on the Indian Railway. He is wise and sympathetic, but also serious and blunt, always going straight to the point. If there is a way to set things right, he can be counted on to carry it out. He also takes no nonsense from slackers or show-offs, often scolding Thomas for his occasional lack of focus, and Ranjit for his attitude. Despite this, he always enjoys a good laugh. There's also Dexter, an old brake coach who was abandoned in an overgrown siding until he was rediscovered by Duck and restored as a classroom. Dexter is a coach that is just as much optimistic as he is colourful. Even when left on a siding out of use and in poor condition, he kept a positive outlook on his situation. He now resides at Harwick Station in case the children of Arsborough need a classroom to attend. A very interesting thing about this character is that he's voiced by former narrator Mark Morgahan, so it's really nice that the team at Mattel are keeping him on despite him not being the narrator anymore. It's just a really nice touch. Some of the new characters are really interesting to its credit, and I really love Rebecca in the show. We also get to see some characters from the Great Race return to the show. Like obviously Ashima comes back, but we already know about her since she had a huge spotlight in the movie, so there's no point talking about her again. But two characters that really do get their chance to shine in this series is Rajiv and Shane. Rajiv, the Indian tank engine, is rather arrogant and vain, believing himself to be a royal engine due to his crown. He often makes patronising or belittling remarks to the other engines, but his heart is in the right place. He has a good sense of humour, and he does care for his friends deep down, though he will often be sensitive if it comes close to his crown getting lost or damaged. Once he had a panic attack when the former happened. It is possible Ranjiv's overinflated self-importance may mask some insecurity, as he felt useless without his crown. Shane, the Australian engine, is a big, strong engine who has been working tirelessly to ensure he's in the best shape. Known as the Whispering Giant, Shane's carefree ways make him many friends. Shane can usually be found as a tour guide in the outback with Aubrey and Aidan, his coaches, cracking jokes to the tourists, though he can prioritise fun over common sense, landing him in trouble. And Shane just looks amazing. It's just an amazing choice for his basis. And it was also an engine that got to run alongside the Flying Scotsman during its tour around Australia. And if they decide to have Shane visit Sodor in the future, I would really love to see him interact with Flying Scotsman and make a reference to how both their classes worked together in Australia years ago. That would just be a great opportunity, and a missed one if Mattel doesn't take it to their advantage. And like Shane, his coaches are sensible with a sense of humour. They both admire Isla. Like any coaches, they don't take any nonsense from their engine. Some episodes being pretty decent, and other episodes making it seem like series 8 to 16 all over again. Now, if I had to pick some favourite episodes from this series, one would have to be Forever and Ever because of Gordon's tantrum about the changes the Fat Controller made to the railway, like Henry and Edward moving out of Timmer's sheds. And I think this pretty much sums up how a lot of the fans reacted when they were taken out of the Steam team. A pretty entertaining episode, especially considering the fact that it was written by Andrew Brenner. Confusion Without Delay is another favourite because it introduces us to Rebecca, a character who I love to see in the show and look forward to seeing more of. I also love how in this episode that Flying Scotsman comes back and has interactions with Gordon and Rebecca. So it's really nice to see him appear in episodes rather than specials, and I hope that this continues throughout the series. Especially with my idea of him meeting Shane and them talking about how they were in Australia together years ago. Trusty Trunk is another favourite of mine because it shows some realism on the Indian railways, like having elephants help out with the rescuing of engines when they come off the tracks. And I'm not joking, that actually did happen in real life. And I know, I did some research. Thomas in the Wild is a guilty pleasure of mine because I think it's adorable seeing those baby panda cubs in the end of the episode. It's just so adorable. An Engine of Many Colours is another favourite because I feel like this is an episode that was intended for Series 21 before the team made the writers hold back on it to make room for the next series and the movie. It just shows St. James's story that took place in between the fastest red engine on Sodor and a new shed for Edward. Seeing is Believing is a nice episode because it brings back Merlin from Journey Beyond Sodor, and it's really nice to have the scene at the end where he talks to Trevor the traction engine, a character that hadn't been seen that much in a while. Apology Impossible is another favourite because I love how Philip stands up for himself with James after his boasting and arrogant nature takes the best of him. I quite like Samson and the Fireworks because it reminds me of how I used to be scared of fireworks when I was a kid. And seeing Cyril the Fogman again since Series 6 is just awesome. Rosie is Red is another favourite of mine because of the things I mentioned in my Thomas and Rosie's friendship review, so you'll have to go back to that to get the full details of it. So in conclusion, I see Series 22, aka Big World Big Adventures, as being like Series 8. The team trying out something new and it not exactly working very well. But if they really put their minds to it, they can make it work in the future if they really put their heads together and think about it. And definitely bring back more Railway Series stories. The show needs those to come back. So not really what I would watch a million times over and over again, but if you're interested in seeing other countries in Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends and new engines, then this would be something to check out. So check it out for yourselves and get your own opinions out there. It's time to wrap up Thomascember 2019 with Digs and Discoveries, a DVD containing 2 double-length special episodes and 5 regular-length episodes from the 23rd series of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, all featuring Italy, the Sodor Construction Company, or both. So can Digs and Discoveries hold up as a great Thomas movie, or will it be a huge bomb like some of the previous films? Let's have a look. Thomas travels to Italy, where he's introduced to the country's rich, ancient history. While working on the Italian railroad, Thomas meets Stefano, the super cruiser, and runs into his old friend Gina, just in time for her to come to his rescue after his curiosity leads to trouble. Determined to make an amazing discovery, Thomas finds himself lost down an old mine where he uncovers the legendary lost engine Lorenzo. So how is Digs and Discoveries compared to the previous Thomas adventures? It's really just multiple episodes mashed up together on DVD. Yeah, realistically it's just several episodes mashed into one DVD, trying to make it look like a movie. The episodes that were included on the disc were All Tracks Lead to Rome, Minds of Mystery, Lorenzo's Solo, Too Loud Thomas, First Day on Sodor, Deep Trouble, and Out of Sight. Most of these episodes were taking place in Italy and the others were taking place on Sodor, focusing on the Sodor construction crew, aka Jack in the Pack. And while the story of Thomas trying to discover stuff in Italy and uncover the mystery of the lost engine is quite entertaining, it just can't hide the fact that it's several episodes mashed on one DVD trying to make a movie. And you can't really do that and expect it to work that well. With the Family Guy movie, Stewie Griffin The Untold Story, that worked because every single episode that was in it all tied in together. And only 2 episodes on this DVD tie in together. Now, like I said, Family Guy did it with Stewie Griffin The Untold Story, but those 3 stories connected with each other, so it was easy to make a movie with those. And even Disney did it with some of their direct-to-video sequels, like The Return of Jafar, Stitch the Movie, and all that stuff. But those worked because they were pilot episodes for their TV series, and Leroy and Stitch was a finale to the Lilo and Stitch TV series. But you could see those as their own movies. Well, except maybe Return of Jafar, that was obviously a pilot episode for the cartoon. So yeah, just taking several episodes and putting it on one disc, trying to make it look like a big movie, just doesn't really work for me. And I think they'd have been better off purposely writing it as a movie like they did with the previous films. But with that said, I do quite enjoy the episodes that are set in Italy. Mostly all tracks lead to Rome and Mines of Mystery, because those are great episodes and they really do tie in together to make a 45-minute special like The Adventure Begins. In the other episodes you could just watch on their own and they'd have nothing to do with the story of the mines and the discoveries and whatnot. The DVD also introduces us to many new characters, including reintroducing us to Gina, the Italian tank engine who once participated in the shunting challenge at the Great Railway Show. Gina is a sweet and stylish engine who can match the boys pound for pound when it comes to shunting trucks in the yard. She is very proud of her Italian heritage and loves working on archaeological digs to uncover more about the history of her cherished homeland. Gina does not suffer fools gladly, and will often grow irritable when someone acts like they know it all, particularly about her areas of expertise. She also doesn't like it when someone implies that she huffs and puffs. Nonetheless, she is loyal and caring and will always set grudges aside for the sake of helping others. She also shows that despite Thomas's antics and mishaps, she truly enjoys his visit to the country. An interesting fact about this character is that in The Great Race she was voiced by Teresa Gallagher, who pretty much voices most of the female characters in the show, but when they brought her back for these episodes she was voiced by Anna Francolini. And she just plays the character superbly. I really love this voice that comes out of her mouth. And I look forward to seeing her in the future of the series, and it would be really nice if she went to visit Sodor once. The biggest new character in the episodes is Stefano, the supercruiser from Italy. He is a huge vehicle who could transport engines and other vehicles around the world. He is a bit of a showboat and loves to wow people with his abilities, and revels in their surprise. He is a confident performer and raconteur who likes to tell stories and sees himself as a boat of the world. Stefano can be quite charming and gentle, and is not really as full of himself as his pompous manner might suggest. There is a genuine warmth to his larger-than-life, friendly personality, and he truly cares about others. And this guy just looks amazing. I've never seen a vehicle quite like him. A big carrier ship that can run on land and on water. It's just something that I've never seen before in a big vehicle. Obviously I've been on one of those duck tours in London where they have like the buses that run on the roads and go along the waters of the Thames like a boat. But this is the first time I've seen something that big do both. There's Lorenzo, a vintage Italian tender engine from Verona, and his coach Beppe. He's famous not only for his wandering curiosity, but his intense love of opera singing. He loves the sound of his own voice and being the centre of attention, especially when singing operatic ditties with his small coach Beppe. Whilst his speaking voice may be deep, Lorenzo has a classical tenor singing voice. Additionally, his quest for fame can lead him into being impulsive at times. His curiosity and impulsive actions often get the better of him, which lead both him and Beppe getting lost. Lorenzo loves fame more than anything else when given the chance, but is never too vain to part from Beppe permanently, often reclining at the end of their escapades. Lorenzo's voice actor really does come across to me as a proper Italian singer. Like maybe he started out life as an opera singer before he took up voice acting. And I don't know if that was the case at all with the actor, but it just sounds like that to me. His coach, Beppe, loves to sensationalise situations and idolises Lorenzo. They're quite like an operatic double act and often break out into song. Beppe sings the bass notes of Lorenzo's tenor voice. He is well behaved and always in a musical mood. When Lorenzo gets singing, he doesn't hesitate to join in, though the two usually choose to do so regardless of their surroundings. Much like any coach, Beppe doesn't take nonsense from Lorenzo lightly, and the tender engine's curiosity and quest for fame usually ends up annoying him in one way or another. Like other small characters, Beppe prefers thinking of himself as useful despite his size, and always has Lorenzo's back in the end. Though he also sees Gina as a good substitute. As for the new construction workers, there's Brenda, the turquoise blue bulldozer who works with the company. She is very tidy and would go to great lengths to stop anything from ruining her flat ground, Max and Monty especially. She takes great pride in her work, and Miss Jenny remarks that nobody can keep things level like our Brenda. She can easily make assumptions if unlevel ground is involved, but is apologetic in the end if she found the truth out. One thing I find weird about Brenda is that when they first introduced her in Mines of Mystery, she just brought in as this character and you're like, yeah, we're supposed to just accept that she's the new character and we already know her, so there you go. But I feel that the episode First Day on Sodor is a proper introduction, because that's where we get to see her personality more and more. One thing I never expected to see in this special was Jack and the Pack come to Italy. That was a really nice surprise in my opinion. And the last new character of the DVD is Esther, a miniature excavator who works in the Italian construction company. She takes life with excitement and a slow pace, speaking with the grandeur of an artist. She is slow and methodical, often getting amused at fast, excited actions, and is quick to take ideas when given the right material. Despite her slow approach, Esther is not above moving fast when excited. And one thing this DVD definitely gets right is the sceneries of Italy. I absolutely adore the sceneries of Italy. The whole of Italy in these episodes just looks spectacular when you look at it. I mean, it really shows that the creators must have done some research in Italian landscapes to get the right images for this one. Just seeing the Leaning Tower of Pizza and the old Colosseum in Thomas the Tank Engine is just remarkable in my opinion. And the one thing I adore the most about it is getting to see those geological sites where they're digging up for old fossils and bits of Rome and whatnot. It's also really nice to have Thomas the Tank Engine being part of a construction site where they're looking for geological treasures. It's almost quite similar to King of the Railway where they were looking for King Godred's treasures. That's really brilliant in my opinion. That's just a really great thing to show in Thomas the Tank Engine, and it's a great way to teach kids that watch the show about archaeological discoveries. So the first 2 episodes are really great and the sceneries are great, but it's not nearly enough to save this DVD. I will find myself watching the first 2 episodes of the DVD more and more and consider it a special, but as a movie, I wouldn't consider it to be a movie. It's just too much of mismatched episodes that are trying to be a movie, and you can't really pull that off if they don't fit in with each other story-wise. Whereas the first 2 do, the rest of it don't. So this is just another one of those DVDs with episodes that were never seen on TV before and they just decided to mash them together into a DVD. So long story short, great as single episodes, not so great as a movie. So I wouldn't consider Digs and Discoveries to be a great special, but I do consider it to have some great episodes about Italy and archaeological discoveries. And if you haven't seen any of the episodes yet, I would highly recommend checking it out if you're interested in Italy, Italian heritage and archaeological discoveries and Thomas the Tank Engine. You may get some excitement and enjoyment from the episodes, or you may not. And in all honesty, Steam Team to the Rescue that was recently released on TV this year is a better special than this one. But that review's going to have to wait till next year. And that brings us to the end of Thomascember 2019. It was really fun to go through all these specials and merchandises and various topics that I felt were worth talking about. And there'll be plenty of more topics and specials and episodes to go through next year, but until then, this is Dalek44 saying Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, fans.